Changing realities in the Asia-Pacific have prompted Japan to significantly boost its defense spending. China and the Philippines clashing in the South China Sea, military drills in the Taiwan Strait, and constant missile tests launched by North Korea. All perceived threats to the island nation, which has sworn to stay out of war. How have recent events tested Japan's pacifist constitution? September 2nd, 1945. The Japanese Empire surrendered at the end of World War II, ending Tokyo's decades of colonialism and brutal military expansion in Asia. The nation, while under Allied occupation, soon adopted a new constitution that prohibited it from engaging in war and from having a military, at least according to a strict interpretation of Article 9. Under Article 9, Japan renounced war as a sovereign right and vowed that its own war potential would never be maintained. But eventually, Cold War pressure sparked conflict on the Korean peninsula, leaving Japan vulnerable and the U.S. in need of a strong ally in Asia. Article 9 was reinterpreted to make way for the Japanese Self-Defense Forces, established in 1954.
The Japanese the constitutions, as interpreted by the ruling party since then, gives room for the possession of forces for the purpose of self-defense.
The JSDF exists officially to protect Japanese territory, but when compared with the strongest armed forces in the world, it is among the most well-equipped. And yet, between 1960 and 2019, Japan's military budget remained under 1% of its total GDP. But Tokyo has not needed to build up its armed forces after a revised U.S.-Japan Security Treaty was signed in 1960.
The U.S. has an obligation to defend Japan if Japan is attacked by another party. But the treaty did not mandate Japan come to the defense of the United States when the United States is attacked by another party.
More than 50,000 U.S. soldiers are stationed in Japan. 60% of the troops are in Okinawa, a strategic island sandwiched between mainland China, Taiwan, and Japan's main islands. But lately, the U.S. has pushed Tokyo to invest more in its own defense because of perceived threats in the region.
しかし、それと同時にルールを守らず、他国の平和と安全を武力の行使や武力による威嚇によって踏みにじる者が現れる事態に備えなければなりません。
Ahead of the release of its 2024 annual defense white paper, Japan's Ministry of Defense said the nation is in the most severe and complex security environment of the post-war era. Among Japan's most pressing perceived threats, North Korea and China. North Korea has long been a headache for Japan. The reclusive state has been increasing the frequency of its nuclear-capable missile tests, some of which have crossed into Japanese airspace. Meanwhile, China has its own ambitions in the Pacific.
現在の中国の対外的な姿勢、あるいは軍事動向等については、我が国のこの平和と安全及び国際社会の平和と安定を確保し、法の支配に基づく
Tokyo and Beijing have overlapping maritime claims in the East China Sea. The islands that Japan calls the Senkakus and China calls the Diaoyu Islands have been a flashpoint for decades.
Japan has been also trying to cope with the growing threat of China. And this only worsened as China escalated its incursion into the territorial water around the Senkaku Islands.
Japan is also invested in a potential crisis over Taiwan. Beijing sees Taiwan as part of China to be reunited by force if necessary. Most countries, including the US and Japan, do not recognize Taiwan as an independent state. but Washington is opposed to any attempt to take the self-ruled island by force and is committed to arm Taiwan.
Japan is also looking at another possibility of a crisis in the Taiwan Straits, as rhetoric by the Xi Jinping administration has escalated over Taiwan. So those are all concerns that drove Japan's movement toward larger defense spending.
Beijing has accused Japan of being responsible for regional tensions.
日本新版的防卫白皮书粗暴地干涉中国内政，老调重弹炒作所谓中国威胁，渲染地区局势紧张。
So what exactly is Japan's new defense strategy? In 2020, the nation's military budget broke the 1% ceiling for the first time in 60 years and has since kept growing. In 2022, Japan announced a 100% increase in defense spending to 2% of its total GDP by 2027.
今後、5年間で緊急的に防衛力を抜本的に強化するため、43兆円の防衛力整備計画を実施する。
The budget is being allocated to pay for new equipment, such as drones, transport vehicles and vessels, ammunition and missiles, as well as for intelligence gathering and the upgrade of JSDF facilities. Tokyo has signed new security pacts with other countries like the Philippines and South Korea, not only to counter China, but also in case of U.S. disengagement from the region.
The credibility of the U.S. alliances in this region are very much at stake. So for that reason, Japan wants to cooperate with regional partners to make sure that they can collectively respond to a crisis situation over the Taiwan Straits.
Sato also said Article 9 might not be a major barrier to building up offensive capacities.
Some people have called it the elastic constitution because its interpretation has been stretched. But I think this offense defense, the boundary has never been clear in the warfare.
In 2015, former Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe reinterpreted the constitution to allow the JSDF to intervene overseas. The decision was met with public outcry.
特に今の政府の暴走でまた日本が戦争にできるような国になってしまうのがやっぱり指をくわえて黙って見ているわけにはいかないなと。
70年間その第9条があったおかげで戦争に、加担することもなく日本が戦争に、責められることもなくその基本になっているのが憲法9条だと思います。
Lately, it appears Japanese public opinion has started to shift. According to a survey conducted in 2024 by the conservative Yomiuri newspaper, 63% of those surveyed agreed the Constitution should change in some way. 53% said Article 9, Paragraph 2, which bars the establishment of land, sea, and air forces, should be amended. But only 25% were in favor of amending Article 9, Paragraph 1, which forever renounces war or using force to settle international disputes. A change to either could mean Japan's military could play a bigger role in policing the region.